Once upon a time, there lived a powerful family in Europe named the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs gained control over vast amounts of territory through copious incest. After generations of intermarriage and weird-looking babies, Charles V was set to inherit the Spanish Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, southern Italy, and the Netherlands. Charles V had a vision of uniting all of his territory under Catholicism, despite how varied the beliefs were in his holdings. Many people in the Netherlands were Calvinists. Calvin's emphasis on a job well done really appealed to us because we spent much of our time hard at work planting tulips, building windmills, and spelling words with way too many letters. You see, in most parts of Europe, if someone disagreed with your religious beliefs, you were, well, let's just say your trip to heaven was pushed forward. But here in the Netherlands, we were too busy making money and fighting the ocean to really care what our neighbors believed in. Charles V did not approve of the Netherlands' religious tolerance, but he didn't really take any action to counter it either. After religious crises in the Holy Roman Empire, Charles realized that his dream of achieving religious unity in Europe may not be realized. Eventually, after a reign steeped in conflict and declining health, Charles stepped down from the throne. In his place, he left his son Philip the Terrible. Philip the Terrible was a devout Catholic, and he wanted to continue what his father started by subjecting the people of the Netherlands to Catholicism against their will. Philip the Terrible forced Calvinists to pay taxes and to attend Catholic services, where we had to stare at the back of a bald guy's head for hours while he waved his arms over some bread. You can only push people so far before we start to break. So in retaliation, the Calvinists committed minor property damage to the Catholic churches, angering Philip the Terrible. In response, Philip sent the Duke of Alva and an army of 20,000 men to punish the Calvinists. During Alva's occupation, he constructed the Dutch oven, where thousands of Calvinists were baked at 350 and served over Spanish rice. The Dutch could no longer live under this sort of persecution, and they began to fight back. The brave sea beggars began to retake territory in the northwest, while the heroic William of Orange launched an offensive to the east. The Spanish returned with a campaign of their own, led by Don Fadrique. The Spanish took back much of the rebel holdings, but the Dutch fought tooth and nail to push back the Spanish once again and achieved naval superiority. With the Dutch at an advantage, the Spanish economy in decline, the unpaid Spanish army became so angry they just began to march around the Spanish-held provinces committing atrocities. The Spanish trampled every tulip and destroyed every wooden shoe factory in sight. This was the final straw, and all of the Netherlands united against Philip the Terrible. The pacification of Ghent united all of the Netherlands, except for Luxembourg, and called for the removal of all Spanish troops, the end of Protestant persecution, and the right for the Dutch provinces to rule themselves. Spain initially accepted these terms, but later returned to invade the southern provinces. The remaining northern provinces united under the Union of Utrecht, and with little help from the English, were able to drive Spain to the negotiating table. Spain's economy was in shambles, and the Dutch fought so well that the Spanish had no choice but to call for a ceasefire and formally recognize the Union of Utrecht's independence. Finally, we were allowed to practice Calvinism and wear wooden shoes in peace. We became one of the first countries to allow all religions within its borders, and the Netherlands' role as a maritime hub made Amsterdam one of the most important cities in the world, and everyone in the Netherlands lived happily ever after. The end.